one question, like I said, is off limits.
Who took care of your children while you were not available?
Their father. They have a wonderful
Oh,
father.
that's fabulous.
Yes.
So they have a really good, stable parent.
They did, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank
I mean,
you.
that was one good thing you did.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you for an inspiring story. I have just one question. You know, clearly you had a lot of help to get on top of the fence post. But there are many other turtles that have been lifted up to the fence post and quickly scrambled off.
Mm.
What made it possible for you to want to stay there?
Determination, I don't, I didn't want to live and I didn't want to die. I literally, every day, I never wanted to wake up. When I would wake up, I would try to find ways to end my life. And once I was able to have some clarity and I had a counselor who showed me empathy and was able to help me realize what I knew was important to me. And the support of my family, I think that's what really came about, was as I was able to get some tread and start to have a little bit of sobriety under my belt, and I was able to prove myself a little bit more and more each day, and my family was able to, know that I was there. Right, and then they were able to encourage me, which reinforced what I was doing at that time. So it really was, it wasn't just one thing, it was a pattern of reinforcement, and it was hard because nobody's going to believe an addict at first, right? How many times did I lie and said I was going to do it this time, or no, I'm clean, look at me, and take a picture, and I was like, wow, I sent that picture to my daughter? I mean, it's insane, but yeah, thank you for the question. Yes.
You said, stand up, sorry, I can't move.
No, you're okay.
You said a couple of times that disease is an addiction, which I completely agree with. Two questions. Do you think people are finally starting to accept that it's not just a matter of personal choice, that it's, it's brain chemistry? And secondly, are the schools like you're in recommending that they start adopting programs that go beyond therapy and start to utilize things like Suboxone and stuff like that?
We are definitely learning about medicated assisted treatment. And I'm sorry, what was the first part to that question? I just totally lost.
Are people accepting that
Yes.
it's not just a choice?
That it's a disease. I feel that people are accepting it more, but I'm also speaking about it more, and I'm seeing every time I share my story, I see the people in the audience nodding. I feel that the more we speak up about it and educate, it provides, helps reduce the stigma, right? And I'm sure if I asked everybody to raise their hand, do you all know somebody who suffers from the disease of addiction? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of you would raise your hands. And then if I took it even a step further and said, do you know somebody in your family, do you personally know somebody who suffers from the disease? Or have you personally overcome an addiction? Until it hits home, I think it's hard for people to wrap their head around it until it strikes their family, and then that's what happens. It doesn't discriminate. So, yes.
Yeah, apart from the fact that perhaps in your family history there's addiction, the thing that caught my eye here was that original physician who prescribed the opioids. Did that person face consequences at all? Or?
Not yet. I just ordered all my medical records. Yeah, no.
It seems like, that's where the problem starts. I'm a physician, by the way, so I'm not insensitive to the issues, but I think that's what needs to be done with, because you weren't intending to become an addict. You weren't looking for a high or anything like that. You were just looking for relief of pain, and someone prescribe medication for those symptoms inappropriately numerous times, it sounded like. And
Yes.
so, you know, I think that end of the story needs to be dealt with as well.
Thank you. Yes,
First of all, I applaud you for your courage telling your story.
thank you.
My question would be, you mentioned the quote of being inspired by people you meet and the books that you read.
Mm.
I wonder if you would offer a suggestion as to what books you have encountered that have given you inspiration.
Early in my recovery, there were 2 books that I had come across. Actually, one was even prior to that, because I would actually get it. I would find it at the Goodwill, even during active addiction, and give it out. But the book, The Secret, The Laws of Attraction, and there was another book by Steve Harvey called Jump. And those are 2 books that I really clung to at the beginning of my recovery, just to know that there's something besides the fear that I'm sitting in right now, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in your head and to, gosh, everything's so overwhelming, right? You're not only learning to, well, for me, going back to school, but I was learning how to live a life again, okay? I am also reading a couple very interesting books. Sam Quinones, and it is called Dreamland, and it is very much about the opioid epidemic, how we ended up in it from the overprescribing, but then also the culminating factor of how the Mexican cartel just swooped right in and like was able to feed the beast with heroin, which was a lot cheaper and easier to get. You know, I do want to say that many years I was taking pills, and they were always by my doctor, right? I was getting oxycodone 30s, an obscene amount. I would get tapered down, and then I'd fake something, and then he'd jack me back up, and then it would just carry on. And it's nothing that I ever wanted for myself. It's nothing that I ever wanted for my kids. I went to the doctor because I detached my labrum, which is what keeps your ball and socket together. So I kind of had to have it fixed. It was detached. It had to be reattached. And through no fault of my own, I was prescribed medication. And it's all over the news. I'm not unique. The reason that I'm standing up here today and sharing my story is because my daughter, when I fell out of her life at the age of 12, had a counselor that provided her hope. She provided her hope by just self-disclosing that she was a recovering heroin addict. My daughter told me that when she told her that she knew that I could beat it because that I was the strongest woman that she ever knew. So it gave my daughter hope. I will tell you the power of that. My counselor had self-disclosed. It provided hope for me to know that, wow, if he could do it, so could I. The power of sharing your story is so great. So many people are ashamed to share their story because there's such an ugly stigma attached to addiction. But it's a disease. It's a part of your area responsible for decision making, right? Yeah.
When you were on the street and associating with other addicts, how did you assess the number or percentage that were there similar to you with prescribed situation?
God, you know, a large amount, probably like 50% from where I was at. There was people that, you know, had been brought up in that culture and that lifestyle that have always been doing that, but there were so many, probably 50%, that had owned a business before, that were a laborer and injured themselves and then got strung out on pain medication, and it was high. Yeah, it was high. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.